And it was Friday morning his time. He picked up and he said, hi, Les speaking. And I go, Les Brown? He said, yes, it is. I said, Les Brown, it's Laban Ditchburn from Melbourne, Australia here. He said, well, how can I help you, boy? I said, Les, I'm a huge fan of you and your work. And I'm also the host of an incredible podcast series that had 10 subscribers, 5 of which were my family members. And I'd be honored if you came on and shared your amazing story with our audience. When are you available?
Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Hey, welcome.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome, Laban. I'm glad you're here. So let's start off because actually I thought about this question. I'd love to hear what your answer is going to be. So if I just met you in the bar, what's the first thing you would tell me about yourself?
So if you were to say, like, we'd got past the formality of the hey, Laban, nice to meet you. What do you do? Is that what the question is?
Yeah, let's go there.
It's my favorite question, and the reason being because I have an answer for it, and it is, I am the world's best courage coach, and 99 times out of 100, people go, "Wow, what does that look like?" And I go, "Well, I teach people how to take bold, massive, and courageous action so that they can facilitate their own miraculous outcomes. And I do that through my speaking, my podcast series, my book, my masterminds, and the coaching that I do."
Okay, perfect. So you were born like that, right?
No.
That's a trick question. That is totally a trick question because I've read your book, Bet on You. And you know what? I'm not a very good podcaster at the moment because I forgot your book. It's in the other room. And I have a copy of it. There you go. That one, Bet on You. I read it so fast because I couldn't put it down at night. It was awesome. And it reads real easy. And I love the stories. So we're going to jump into all that too.
Well, thank you very much. While I did I ask you if you were happy enough to put a review on Amazon for me when you finished?
Oh, you know what? Probably not. So yes, I will go put that on Amazon for you.
It's okay. If and when you're ready. The reason being, for those listening, if you're an author, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, the organic testimonials or reviews will help organic people find the book further down the line. So whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, it's really important. So
I'll do it. Absolutely.
It's above and beyond. I mean, you've already paid your hard-earned money to read a book. The fact that you walk away from reading a book where you've gotten one piece of value from it is also another miracle. And the third miracle is someone who wants to go out of their way to leave a review. So you have to. I certainly get into a habit of, but particularly for people that are benefit from it or say how much they liked it, because it's a huge big compliment to me, obviously, but that's why I wrote it, to help people. So, the more people that can get access to it, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I don't know if I told you this or not, but I have a series on Wednesdays that come out called Wednesday Wisdom. And I actually did take an excerpt from your book. And I'm not going to do the spoiler, but there was a line in your book that hit me enough that I went and did a 6-minute montage out of that line in your book. And it's a Wednesday Wisdom. It's coming out soon. And depends on when people listen to this, it's probably already out, but it's there. And I reference your book as well. So I'm not going to spoil it though.
Wow. That's fantastic. Thanks, Sue.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Talk a little bit about your book since we're talking about it, because what's really cool is that Les Brown wrote the foreword to your book. And there's a great story that goes around that. And I'd like you to share that because I just think it's really cool.
Well, of course. One of my favorite stories to tell, in fact. And if you can hear any airplanes going overhead, just bear with me. April 2020 was an interesting month for a lot of people, but it was the first of what ended up being nearly 20 months of lockdown in Melbourne, Australia, where my wife and I were living. And I was already beaten down and put through the mill after an attempt at being an entrepreneur in 2019, which was a total unmitigated financial disaster. And I use that term for effect only because it ended up being a massive blessing in disguise. But when the lockdowns kicked off, I knew at that stage, Sue, that I wanted to be a speaker. And there was the only way that I could get my voice out to the world was to create a podcast. So I created the Become Your Own Superhero podcast, and it just sort of resonated with me about this self-empowerment driven around so much Marvel and, like these franchise superhero companies that are the role models for everyone else. And it's like, why don't you just become your own superhero? And so that's where that was born. And 7 episodes in, I decided to be even more brash and outlandish than what I ordinarily would be. And I reached out to Les Brown. And for those who don't know Les, if you get on YouTube after this and put Les Brown in the browser, it will transform the rest of your day. He is regarded as one of the greatest transformational speakers of this generation. And he was someone whose work helped get me out of pretty dark times in the lead up to even reaching out and connecting with him. And I cold called him one Saturday morning this is back in Australia, and it was Friday morning his time. He picked up and he said, hi, Les speaking. And I go, Les Brown? He said, yes, it is. I said, Les Brown, it's Laban Ditchburn from Melbourne, Australia here. He said, well, how can I help you, boy? I said, Les, I'm a huge fan of you and your work. And I'm also the host of an incredible podcast series that had 10 subscribers, 5 of which were my family members. And I'd be honored if you came on and shared your amazing story with our audience. When are you available? He said, well, when are you thinking, boy? And I said, to be honest, Les, whenever you're available, probably works well with me. So we scheduled it on Tuesday midnight my time, and I nearly missed the date. And thanks to my beautiful wife, Anna, she was like, I think it's on tonight. And when I checked, it was. We get on there, and I captured all of this on raw Zoom footage. So what I'm about to share with you, 100% can be verified by video. We got on, it was a little bit of small talk, and I said to him, hey, Les, what do you think of the name of the podcast, Become Your Own Superhero? Well, so he just humbled me with what he thought of the name. And I was so endeared to this man that I just verbally diarrheaed my story of transformation, which was, conquering drink and drugs and gambling and philandering and autoimmune disease and, blah, 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 all these things. And something I said in there must have resonated with him, because he let me finish and he said, congratulations, Laban. I said, thanks, Les. He goes, do you have a book? And I go, no. He goes, if you're going to be a speaker, Laban, you'll need a book to help with your credibility. And I go, okay. He goes, who was the most influential person in your life when you were 5 years of age? Question I'd never been asked before. And I went, wow. Despite her many flaws, it'll be my mother. And Les Brown looks up to me and he goes, Laban, this is a God moment. He said, I'm going to show you how to monetize your purpose. And for the next 10 minutes, so he reads back to me the blueprint for this book he wants me to write called Bet on You. Because one of my main vices was a pathological degenerate gambler. And he said, Laban, you're going to write the book. You're going to turn it into a keynote speech. You're going to turn the keynote into a 3-day retreat. And even if you stuff this up, you're going to make 6 figures in the next 12 months. And he said, I'm going to interview you on my social media platform, which had 4.5 million followers on it at that time. And I'm going to write the foreword to your book. And this was May 14th, 2020. Now, me never having finished high school or even going to college or ever having written anything of any significance, said, Les, if you're going to write the foreword to my book, I'll have it to you by June 30. And in 6 weeks, I pumped out 33,000 words of the first draft and delivered it to Les's inbox as promised, and completely changed my life in the process. And it culminated. Les followed through with his commitment to write the foreword. I never paid him a cent for it. I never told him what to say. And my wife and I shared a moment in his home in 2022. He invited us there for dinner, just the three of us. And in one of the most surreal moments of my life for a man who isn't playing humble but doesn't have a large audience or platform at this stage. So it's a hell of a story, and one I love telling. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, you're right. That is a hell of a story. How did that make you feel? Like, did you ever imagine in your life that where you were 5 years ago? So let's go back to like 2018, 2019. Could you ever envision back then to where you are now?
So 2018 was a breakthrough year for me. If you'd asked me and said, do you think this is possible? With the mindset I had then, I would have said anything's possible. I may not have believed it, but if you asked me in 2015, in February of 2015, I would have laughed in your face.
Mm. How did you make the
And
jump then from being impossible, like at 2015, I don't think this is possible at all, this is crazy, to, because a lot of people don't make that jump. So what was it for you that made the jump?
well, 2015 was the rock bottom point for me. That was the point where I said enough is enough. And I, I talk about this quite a lot, but it was really the, I knew that I was destined for much. I knew that I was destined for major things when I was really young, like single digits young. And by the time I got to 35, I realized that I wasn't living that life. And I was like, something has to change. And I'd been relying on external saving, which is why now I even think about it, become your own superhero resonated so deeply with me, because it's like, all right, you're going to do this by yourself now. No one is coming to save you. So that kicked off the healing journey and the asking for help journey. And by the time I got to 2018, I was in a Bradley Cooper and limitless form of mental capacity. I was flying on all cylinders, and that's when I did all my crazy long distance runs. It's the year I met Anna. It's the year I gave up internet dating. It's the year I gave up porn for 2 years or some ridiculous number. Like it was a big breakthrough year.
Yeah, and your book unpacks everything that you just talked about as well. And I mean, it was amazing. I think for me, the part of the book that really went into it that I found I didn't even understand about running long distance marathons and what happens when you run, what is it, 10 mile, well, in miles, we're in miles, you're in kilometers, but 10, it was like 24 miles, wasn't it? It was a crazy distance, and you didn't do it just once, you did it twice. But the way you told the story, I have to say, I was like in tears at one point. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that he is putting himself through this and he's doing this. This is some really hard shit, right? And it's like, as I was reading this, I'm wondering what drove the inside to continue to run those races and finish the end where others would have given up.
Well, they were 60 milers. So there was a 26 miler, which is the marathon distance, but the other ones that I've done three of are the 60 milers. They're the ones that really hurt. They're the ones that you're on your feet for 21 hours is my longest time, I think, to complete one of these. So
What's the
you
driver?
well,
I'm fascinated. What's the driver that would drive you to run for 21 hours straight?
so what? Look, I don't honestly know. I've used the phrase like find better addictions because I quit drinking. I quit the gambling at the end of 2015. 2016, I quit the drugs and the drinking, and it'll be 8 years of sobriety in August this year, August 2024. So I had cut all of these things that were creating huge amounts of dopamine in my system. And physically, like I'd lost 60 pounds of body fat and put on 30 pounds of muscle in 2 years. So my whole physicality had changed. So I was now a runner. I'd never been a runner. I loved it. And when I was on those runs, when you get to a certain distance, I would burst into tears, like tears of joy. And so it was a very cathartic thing for me. I still run a reasonable amount now. I did about a 10-mile run yesterday on a treadmill, but not. I haven't been the distances that I did for the last couple of years. We have been traveling for the last 2.5 years, so it's made a big difference. But um, I made a commitment to myself to finish that race, and we'd raised a bunch of money the first time, and I got injured, so I actually limped for the last 50 kilometers or 30 miles, and that pain was worse than anything I'd endured in anything in my life at all. And but there was just no choice. The pain of giving up early was not even an option for me. So I don't know. A switch went off in my head, but that's what happened.
I think there's a sense of that accomplishment too. That you've got it done, and it's like, okay, I did that. I'll go on to. I love the line, "Find better addictions." To go and find something else that's going to be a driver for you to feed that desire to want to continue, like to do more, to do more.
Well, let's talk about you for a quick second. I don't want to gloss over the fact that, folks, Sue and I met in January of 2024, introduced through Matt Drinkham. And her and I had a conversation, and I threw out a challenge in the same way Les threw out to me and gave her an incentive to write the first draft. And I, no joke, have a full-length book draft on my inbox, which I haven't read yet. And it's February 22nd.
Okay, so to put it in the timeline,
for this.
I talked to you on January 15th. January 17th, I wrote chapter 1, and you challenged me to have something written by April 30th. And I was like, I remember the question. Actually, first I was floored, and then I remember the question, and then my brain had this back and forth moment and went, God, can I really pull that off by April 30th? Don't know. And then once it started on January 17th, I realized, oh, wait a minute. And it just took off from there. But it really was your encouragement. It was that question that was the catalyst that did it. So
well,
I appreciate
I'm
it.
so pleased to hear that. I've read snippets of it, and I can tell it's going to be an amazing book. You've laid it all out in the line. There's no, well, from the short amounts that I've read, you've opened up about infidelity and all kinds of stuff. It's amazing. But how is that experience? I know you're interviewing me today, but how has that experience been for you, writing all this out and putting it on paper?
Wow, that's a great question. Healing. I would say healing for me. The other folk, well, the main character of the book is me. It's basically some of my life experiences that I've had, but also weaved into the book is my coach, Austin Linney. And I can't tell my story without having Austin in it. I sent you a copy of my book like 6 hours ago, so I didn't expect you to read much of it at all. So it's not like you had it for 3 weeks. I just sent it this morning. But anyway, my story really can't be told without Austin. And when I started coaching with Austin on July 31st, 2023, his method of coaching, one of the tools that he uses in the toolbox is story work. And so we went back to my childhood. As I started talking to him, it was part coaching, part therapy. He pulled out a bunch of titles and said, start writing about these titles from my childhood. And I think that was the beginning of me really brain dumping everything that had been in my brain. So a lot of those stories that are in my book are ones that I wrote out of my coaching with Austin. So that was kind of like where it all started. And then it just snowballed from there. I mean, I think I don't know. I think it's up to a 40 some page document of just journal stories at this point.
Yeah.
And working through all those stories.
Why I'm so pleased for you is the reason that I was and always encourage people and share the motivation that Les gave me, the gift that keeps on giving, is for you to experience the healing. It's nothing to do with the book. And if you've never written a book, trying to explain this to someone is very challenging. Like you can explain it, but do they believe it rather? And every single person that's writing about themselves that I pose this challenge, the small percentage that actually do it, experience what you're experiencing. And that's really the magic of it. So then you'll get to benefit from when it's out and people sending you messages saying, oh my God, Father, I couldn't put it down, or whatever the thing is, like what you just shared with me. What an amazing compliment. Like I spent 4 hours, 5 hours reading your book, start to finish. 5 hours. 5 hours of undivided attention. It's a pretty good thing. So I just wanted to say congratulations. I know it's not out yet, but it will be.
Thank you. Yeah, we're pushing. I'm so excited. And your podcast comes out on Cinco de Mayo because you're just such a fun person to talk to. I love listening to your podcast as well. I just a plug for your podcast. If nobody has listened, you have to go listen because not only are the guests very interesting, but the titles are also very memorable as well. So I think there was the one about the guy who had, surgery, testicular surgery with a machete. I listened to that one. I'm like, that was the most awesome interview that went with the most awesome title. So I loved it.
It was real too. It wasn't even a clickbait. It was a real thing. So, Teddy Barn is his name.
So
Yeah.
raw in that podcast. Like, what are some things that you've experienced out of the podcast that you didn't think were going to be amazing? Like some things that came out of the podcast that you didn't expect.
Oh my goodness. So, this is the only copy of the book I have on me. Like my wife and I are in Colombia at the moment. Like carrying lots of books around is just not practical. But for anyone that gets the Kindle or the paperback version, it doesn't affect the Audible one. The book has, so Les Brown wrote the foreword for it. The people that have written endorsements is mind blowing to me. So just to throw off some names, like Mark Victor Hansen, who co-wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, Dr. John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, Mark Schulman, who's the drummer for Journey and Foreigner and Pink, Sir Steve Hansen, who you won't know the name, but he in New Zealand is the most successful rugby union coach in the history of the game in any country. And these are people that I was able to bring into my life and develop know, like, and trust with them because of the platform of the podcast. And I've done 220 odd interviews so far. I have never paid a guest. I've never paid to be on a podcast. And I have been gifted, and I worked this out when I created a course last year. So more than 1,000,001 of free stuff from the podcast guests and the associated introductions that they've made. And they come in the form of like private coaching, discount, like accommodation. Like we spent 6 months in the US in 2022, and 80% of the 6 months were in the homes of former podcast guests. You know what I mean? Like just ridiculous access. And you know, I run this mastermind that I have for Podcasting Heroes. We had a special guest come and present yesterday, which we do every second meeting. This guy Jason Hewlett. And Jason Hewlett is one of Las Vegas's top Elton John impersonators, and he's a motivational speaker and a Hall of Fame speaker, best-selling author. And he's one of the funniest people I've ever seen in my entire. And he was telling me in front of all my peers yesterday that I'm the funniest person he's ever met, one of the most courageous people he's ever met. And this guy, you know, entertained the troops in Afghanistan a few years ago, and he reckons my book should be nominated for a Grammy. so now, whether any of this stuff's true or not, but like he's saying that, I'm not asking him to say it. How else would that have happened without the access that I've acquired through the credibility of the podcast? Because before the book came out, so I had nothing else apart from the podcast. And before the podcast, the first outrageous cold call I made was to Brene Brown, and that was on January 2nd, 2020. So I had no podcast, no book, no coaching program, sort of nothing. I knew I wanted to be a speaker, but I called her. And she picked up the phone and said, Brene speaking. I said, Brene Brown? She said, yes, it is. I said, Brene Brown, it's Laban Ditchburn from Melbourne, Australia. She said, hi, Laban, how can I help? I said, Brene, I've been instructed by all my mentors that I need to spend as much time with people that are much further along than I am. And I wondered if you'd be interested in sharing some ideas. And she said to me, Laban, I'm about to sit down and have New Year's Day dinner with my family. But if you'd be so kind to send me an email with what you had in mind, I'll come back to you. And no word of a lie, I created a 1 minute long video, which will never see the light of day because it was so embarrassing. But she replied. She replied back. I was going to read it verbatim if I could quickly find it. Here we go. Hi, Laban. Thanks for emailing. With my family, university, and book commitments, I can't take on anything else this year and deliver in a way that is meaningful. I wish you great success on your journey. All the best, Brene. And you can see that there. It might be a bit too. Anyway, you have to trust me, but like how else can you create these kind of scenarios?
Yeah, right. I mean, go ahead.
So no, it's just to finish, like the podcast is the offering that I could have made to Brene. Hey Brene, I had this incredible podcast series. How would you feel about sharing with my audience? So if you don't have something, it makes it a bit more challenging to add value to that person's life.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's amazing. You think of Brene Brown, you think of Les Brown, and then you've got all these other guys. So I have an interesting question. How do you keep that from going to your head? And or do you struggle with like imposter syndrome?
So it's a really fascinating question, Sue, and I'll explain how it's been working for me. Thankfully, I have an incredible wife who supports me blindly, really, in whatever I want to achieve. She doesn't temper me, but she helps keep me grounded, certainly. But I approach connecting with these people from a different angle than most. And it's from what value can I add this person's life? And it's not just famous people, it's anyone that I meet, anyone that I have an opportunity to spend more than a few seconds with. If there's an opportunity to do something fast or small, and the real quick example, I was standing at the meat section at the supermarket the other day here in Medellin, and there was what looked like a mother and a daughter, grown daughter and an older mother, and they were looking at giant pork hocks that were like one piece, and they were about 10 feet to my right, and where I was looking, I could see the same pork hock that had been cut up into more manageable bites. And I went, I wonder if that's what they're looking for. And I went, chicas, which is like ladies. And then I showed them, and they're like, we're just going to ask you. So like, I'm not going to get anything back for that. I'm not doing it to try and elicit any other response other than like just being a little bit helpful. Didn't take much more time from my day, and I walk away from it feeling really good. So that whole what value can I add someone's life, combined with if I'm interviewing them on a podcast, I'll read their books, I'll research the heck out of them, I'll watch other interviews. Some of the people I've researched, I might have done 20 hours research before I get on there, depending on who they are, to try and respect them and ask them interesting questions that they haven't been asked before, like you, but also to create a unique experience for them where they go, who is that guy? Who is that Laban? He didn't want something from me. And as the result, the know, like, and trust goes through the roof, and inevitably, you become friends with some of these people, not all of them, and then get invited onto their platforms. And then all of a sudden you're alongside and have borrowed ethos. It's incredible. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. It's happened to me as well with podcasting. Very rarely do I actually get to talk to other podcasters. So it's a very unique conversation that we can have. But yes, the organic growth that you were talking about, I've experienced as well. And it's this progression that happens that you don't even force it, and it happens. And I never would have met you if it wasn't for Matt. And then Matt and I had another mutual friend in common. So the more you podcast, the more you get to be in the presence of amazing people. And, like you said, you have this opportunity to spend an hour with somebody that you normally wouldn't, and try and add value to their life as they add value to yours.
Just real quick, Sue, for those that have a podcast or are thinking about it, and you can do this too, out of the 220 interviews that I've done, I would say that I have 3/4 of them have given me video testimonials at the end of the interview when the rapport is high and the energy's good. And some of them are about the podcast, some of them are about me, some of them are about whatever. And whenever you're having a bad day, you just flick on a couple of those and you're back into it. So little wee pro tip there for people.
That's a great idea. I never even thought about that. Yeah.
Well, especially because they're professional speakers, many of them. So them doing an impromptu testimonial is a lot easier than, an introverted scientist person.
Yeah, well, this is true. This is true. I tend to have a lot of coaches come on my podcast, but I enjoy interviewing just about anybody who loves to talk about the small steps that they've taken in life and the big wins, big results, whatever, whatever came out of those small steps that they started to take. So I'm going to bounce back because I was listening to Matt's podcast with you on it, and you talk about the old version of you versus the new version that's sitting here today. So I'm curious, how did your old friends start relating to you as you went on your transformational journey? And what did you learn about yourself as you started to shed old relationships and then gain new ones?
For the first 6 months when I gave up drinking, I would still go to the pub. And I stopped going to the pub after my friendship group not only wouldn't get me a lemonade, they wouldn't get me a water. and I was like, being at a pub sober really sucks. It's like you're there to witness the slow degradation of society, right? And there's no judgment for people that want to drink, but I just don't want to be around it. And as I drifted away, there was judgment that came from a lot. And in fact, some of my harshest critics are my former friends. And I had to get pretty ruthless at cutting a number of them out of my life that were going after me for trying to get my life sorted. And it's not a judgment on them. It was just an observation and a survival mechanism that I needed to implement really to do what I needed to do. So my social circle was eviscerated within a very short period of time. And then COVID finished off whatever was left. So what was remaining was a very, very close-knit group of friends. So I have way more impactful relationships with less people, less periphery. I don't have surface level relationships with anyone anymore. I can't. It makes me want to be sick. So one thing I wish someone had told me was that, Laban, don't worry, because you're creating all the space for other people to come into your life. And I didn't know that there had to be sacrifice in order to get the new circle of influence. And if you look at the people that I now call my friends, some of them are some of the most incredible people on planet Earth. And a number of them aren't people you would have heard of, but like, this is the caliber of people. I don't want to seem like I'm trying to big note and say I've got all these famous friends. It's not the case at all. But like, inherently, the people that I've magnetized are people that have gone through similar journeys and also notice and experience the loneliness that happens at times as an entrepreneur or solopreneur and someone who's trying to do good in the world. And people want you to have success until they don't, So it can be very lonely. But I also am very grateful for all the gaps that they created to bring in these incredible people in my life.
Yeah. What do you think was the driver behind the people who you thought were your friends, but turned out that they weren't? They were just like more ruthless. What do you think drove them? They were your friends, but now they're not.
Yeah, I think there's a big shame response in addiction. Well, I mean, I know there is from what I experienced. And me admitting that I had a major problem and was close to them by proxy makes them guilty by association, I suppose. And a lot of them had good jobs and they had family and they had kids, so they're very high functioning. And that's the thing, I was never in the gutter. I was always high functioning, but it wasn't long before I would have ended in the gutter. And I think, people just think to themselves, I'm living this life, I've got a good job, I've got kids, like I'm not an addict. But in reality, they are, and some of the worst kinds. And that's too much for people to swallow sometimes. So they will telegraph and project a lot of their own insecurities onto other people. And unfortunately, that's sometimes people that they were friends with, I'm sure if you went and interviewed a few of my former circle of friends, it would be very interesting to hear what their interpretation of it was. Was it a feeling of being rejected by me? So it's a tough one. You do the best you can, but I'm not going to. Life can be too challenging at times without not making tough boundary setting decisions, and I don't really regret any of those.
No, I wouldn't think so, especially after listening to you and reading some of the stuff in your book too, because you mentioned about deleting all of your social media except LinkedIn and how you just basically decided to go silent that way. What was the driver behind those decisions?
Yeah, so I met a guy here who became my spiritual coach, this guy Constantine, and he got me meditating consistently for the first time in my life. And I did probably, I think I lasted 5 weeks every day, which was amazing for me. And I just came to me, I was like, I need to burn everything down. I deleted a Facebook account that was 17 years old. I deleted an Instagram account, which was probably a similar age, TikTok, uh, Twitter, and then after some time away, in the time that I spoke to you last and now, I've reactivated Instagram, Facebook, and X. But I'm looking at things from a different angle now. The former life that was kind of attached to my older Instagram and Facebook stuff was gone. So it was just kind of like a reset thing for me. And it was an incredible feeling to delete my Facebook account, especially.
Did you feel like it was just letting go of your old self when you did that? Almost a death in a way to delete that account? Like that old Laban no longer exists?
Yeah, I think so. There was it felt like a lot of judgment, Sue, that I was getting, even from people that weren't commenting or posting on anything. And and because of the nature of some of the guests that I'd interviewed on my podcast, I'd experienced major censorship. People that have been Joe Rogan's most popular guests I've had on, and ever since I've had them on, my engagement just fell off a cliff. So
I wonder why would that be? Like if you had one of Joe Rogan's guests, wouldn't the engagement pick up because that guest was, or were they just a controversial guest?
the guest that I'm talking about in particular was Dr. Peter McCullough, who was speaking out against the COVID mandates and all that stuff. A lot of for those who aren't aware, like during COVID especially, there was incredible amounts of censorship to the point where I had videos deleted that were saved as private. So when you save a video as private, it's only there for like as a backup file or something. And so I wasn't getting any engagement. I felt judgment. I was like, what am I even trying to build a business on here anyway? So I just felt called to delete it, felt incredible. And then the one that I have reactivated, it's purely like a business thing anyway. So it's not something that I'm doom scrolling on either. There was quite a bit of that going on.
Yeah, but it's really strange though, because as you're telling me, okay, you deleted the Facebook and the Instagram, but yet the flip side, we hear, oh, you need your social in order to grow, in order to have yourself out there. But you did the opposite. You deleted it and then you accelerated and grew. So, what was the catalyst behind that? Was that your podcast?
So the gift of adversity and having my social media censored was it forced me to come up with alternate ways to get my name out. And I decided, rather than trying to bust my hump trying to get my social media up and running again, that I was just going to go and get invited on the biggest podcast platforms ever. And so that's what I've been doing. So I've been on, and because I was like, let me just bring attention to me through other people's audiences that aren't censored, that have millions of downloads. And so I that's what I started doing. That happened a couple of times last year. I've been on some really big shows, and for no other reason that, like, the feedback that I get from the book have been overwhelmingly positive. People that get to know me and realize, once they aren't triggered by the world's best courage coach statement or my apparent brashness, get to know me and get to like me and can see the value that I bring to the world. Like I want more of that without having to manipulate the system or whatever it might be. And so it was this incredible skill set that I've developed through all this adversity. And like, as best I can tell, there's hardly anyone on planet Earth that can do it. So it's like Liam Neeson, like I've got a particular set of skills now. So there's always silver linings in all of this.
Yeah, right. Do you believe in the law of attraction?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, the positive and negative energies. Because I thought about that when I was thinking about your friends. The ones that no longer want to be around you because now you're kind of like radiating that positive.
Yeah, no, big fan of manifestation. I've witnessed too many miracles in my life, so to think that there's anything but a coincidence. And I practice quantum entanglement often, and I will deliberately think about someone, and many times they will message me or ring me within a few minutes or a few hours.
Talk about
So
quantum entanglement for those who don't know.
oh man, so quantum entanglement. This is the unabridged, non-verified explanation. Basically means that I can have a thought about Sue and you can experience it and it can come back to me faster than the speed of light. So it's happening instantaneously. And it's through vibrations or energy. But the best thing that I can recommend is you just ask Chat GPT to explain it to you like you're a 14-year-old.
Okay.
Because I'm guessing at this point.
Okay.
That's
So,
my best interpretation.
So I've been fascinated by this stuff lately. I've had a number of guests that come on and we've talked about the law of attraction. We've talked about energy. We're all energy beings. I mean, that's whether you believe in God or not. And I'm not going there, but here's the science. You can't disprove the science. We're made up of energy. I mean, boom, that's what it is. We're all there. Like we have this energy, and when we're happy and when we're really excited, like I'm really excited for this podcast. So I'm vibrating at a higher frequency versus being like, real depressed and whatnot. And you're vibrating at a lower frequency. I'm glad you brought up now I'm just having that moment again. It's called quantum. What'd you call it?
Quantum entanglement, like
quantum entanglement. Okay. I think I have an example of quantum entanglement. So tell me if this would resonate. 2 days ago, I had a podcast interview with a gal who is a coach, mindset coach, and she also believes in law of attraction and probably the same thing if I would say that to her. So during the interview, we're talking and we're talking back and forth. And I know she has a place in California and I know she travels back and forth and she's not there sometimes. So selfishly in my brain, I'm going, God, wouldn't it be really cool if I could go stay out at her place for a week and get a break and go write my book and just kind of like detach a little bit and regroup. I thought this, right? And we're talking back and forth. This is a fleeting thought, comes in my brain, out my brain. Didn't give it much thought. We finish the conversation and then we start talking. And I didn't manipulate the conversation or anything because people will be listening to this going like, oh, you just manipulate the conversation. I did not. She comes out of nowhere and she says, hey, Sue, I'm going away next month and in April for a couple of days. She's like, you want to come out to my place? She's like, you can stay in my place. And so I proceeded to tell her, I had that thought during our interview, but I was going to say nothing. She's like, oh yeah. She's like, that's just the energy field and us, the law of attraction and so forth. She's like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me one bit. But isn't when you focus on something, it expands, doesn't it? Like if you start looking for those moments where those moments where you just go, oh my God, what just happened?
Well, so I love those stories. And one example that happened to Anna and I in 2022, we were staying in Lake Austin in Austin, Texas with John and Ginger Mitchell, who was introduced to me through another podcaster. And he's a very successful guy. He's retired now, but they live, if anyone knows that part of Austin, it's where all the rich and wealthy and fabulous live. And John said to me, he goes, Laban, do you know Elon Musk, Sandra Bullock, Matthew McConaughey, and Joe Rogan live on the river? Now, Joe Rogan's podcast in 2015 was a life changer for me. I learned about a functional medicine doctor that spoke about the link between gluten intolerance and heartburn. And that helped me heal a 17-year-long autoimmune disease that I had. Well, when I heard about Joe living down the river, I said to John, wouldn't it be fantastic to write a thank you note in one of my books and throw it on his back lawn? And he said, let's do it. So it's Saturday morning, we get on the boat, and I've written this beautiful thank you note and I put it in like a Perspex case so it stays waterproof. And John knows where Joe lives. And there's no fences because just the back lawn goes onto the river, right? And there's jetties and docks and stuff. And we're getting closer and closer and closer. And I realized there's this very stocky figure standing on the jetty, on the dock. And there's dog there and his daughter. And I'm like, that's Joe Rogan. And so we hadn't planned for this part. So I'm kind of like, hey, Joe. And he like looks up and I go, I've got a present for you. He goes,
I wonder what went through his mind at that moment. Like, what the hell is this guy yelling at me for? What kind of present is that? I don't know if I really want that present. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. I mean, like it's Texas too, so it's like concealed carry permits are a real thing.
Yeah.
And at any minute we could be shot at. But
yeah, that's here in South Carolina too. It's like that here too.
So John's wife Ginger said, "Hey Joe, just want to welcome you out of the neighborhood. How you settling in?" And he's like, "Good." And then my wife Anna goes, "You saved Laban's life," and he goes, "I didn't save his life. How did I save his life?" And we had this amazing 90-second long dialogue. And, John's driving the boat in and out, and the torrent of the river was making it challenging to get close and stay there. And I had this great moment where I threw my book and went and landed in the bottom of the boat, and we drove off into the sunset. And for this kid from New Zealand, 14,000 miles away, whatever it is, like here I am rubbing shoulders with some of the most fascinating, relevant people on planet Earth. And that's the reason for telling you that is just for anyone that's out there that's been thinking about it, worried about there being an oversaturation of podcasts or whatever. I'm telling you, you don't need to have a big audience to have a massive impact, and look at what's happening to you as a result.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, podcast, that's a cool story. That's a very cool story. I mean, podcasts in general, I think, do you happen to know what the stats are on number of podcasts? I think there's something like, they can't nail it down, but I think it's between 3.2 and 4.1 million podcasts registered, but only 10% of them are active.
If you go to listennotes.com, the last time I checked, it's probably around about 3.3 million registered podcasts. But you got to remember, Sue, most podcasts don't get past episode 20.
Right. I heard that statistic. Yeah. If you make it past 21, something like you're in the top 10%. So you always wonder, like, you have 220. I hit over 100 a couple weeks ago. And, you just keep, thank you. You just keep going. Actually, can you imagine not doing a podcast now?
I would feel like I'd lost a limb. And the thing that I would say as well is that if you go to Listen Notes, once you reach 10% of the downloads, they start to rank you. And like mine is currently, I'm in the top 5th percentile of podcasts globally. Now that might sound impressive. The download numbers aren't what you might think, but it's like mine's in the top 5% of downloads. And when I started it, I didn't know the things that I know about that are relevant to a podcast success now. But it's all the other stuff that I've benefited from. I've been able to create a business that's generated 6 figures last year, nearly 6 figures with a mastermind, teaching podcasters how to have better self-esteem so that they feel comfortable talking to high, famous people. So it's, I got a rejection text message from Donny Osmond 2 days ago because I invited him to attend this special presentation because Jason Hewlett, the guy I mentioned, is a Mormon guy, and so is Donny Osmond. So he goes,
did you think when you got what did you think when you got the rejection? How'd you take that? Where's your brain?
No, it was lovely. It was lovely. He said, "Sorry, Laban, I thank you for the invite. I've got dancing rehearsal with my backup dancers." Like, he's one of the busiest guys in Las Vegas. no wonder he's not available on a day's notice. But you don't take it personal. But if I didn't offer it to him, he could never turn up. He could never say no. And I thought it might be cool to have, a group of about 20 people all together wonder who is that Donny Osmond? Like watching this other presentation. How the hell did he do that?
Hey, how'd you pull that one off? What was some of your most memorable guests on your podcast?
I had a Nobel Prize laureate, Professor Barry Marshall, on, who's an Australian gastroenterologist. I used some of you might have heard of a carnivore diet or an animal-based food diet to help heal my autoimmune stuff. And when I did that, it was really when I was very disciplined in 2020, 2019, I observed some changes in my bowel movements. They were less frequent. I didn't smell or have gas in the same way. And this is too TMI, but it's important for the story. And so here I am asking a Nobel Prize winner about what he knows about why my poop doesn't smell. And I know because I've grabbed it in a thick rubber glove and, it smells like the ocean. He couldn't explain it to me. And I thought it was one of the most interesting moments of my life, Sue, because it's like, here this guy is. He's dedicated 40 years to this area, and he doesn't know what I'm talking about. And that was a real catalyst for me to start realizing that I could add a lot of value into these guests' lives. Like a lot of people don't have it all sorted, or they do need a lot of help. And I'm not blaming Professor Barry for not knowing it, but it was just fascinating to me that someone that gets awarded this prestigious prize had never even heard of what I was talking about. And that, with the benefit of hindsight, was pretty funny.
Have you always been a naturally curious person? And do you think that really helps you with what you do in
Yeah.
podcasting?
Yeah, I have. I've always wanted to know how things work, and I've always wanted to experience things myself before I made a decision. So it gave me some pretty good, healthy skepticism in a few areas of my life, which have paid massive dividends. And technically, my brother is brilliant at assembling and putting stuff together. That's not something I enjoy at all. My father's like that, but I'm very naturally inquisitive. And I put it down to back when I was about 8 or 9 years of age. So my father, who mum and dad had split up when I was 3.5, my father bought us a colour TV would have been 1989. And back in New Zealand, we only had about 3 television channels back then. And mum cut the cord on the telly because my brother and I were misbehaving. So as punishment for everyone, she cut the cord on probably about $1,000 television back then. And during the winter, it gets pretty cold there. And all I did was consume from cover to cover the encyclopedia, Collier's encyclopedia. And I don't know how many volumes there was, probably 30 plus the fiction. And that winter, must have got through all those books and just had this natural curiosity for learning. So I think that's probably where it stemmed from.
I can't imagine what it was like in the house when she cut the cord.
Well, I
Probably
think
was not a happy moment.
I think my father was more upset than anyone because he just spent all this money on a television for us
Yeah.
kids, and then
And then she just with the scissors. Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. What are some things that you thought would be hard about giving up your old life? You're like leaving the old life, and it turned out it wasn't, and then flip it. What did you think would be easy and then wound up being more difficult for you?
What I thought would be hard would be giving up drinking and drugs. It was effortless. In fact, it's almost shameful to me how easy it was. And that had a lot to do with being able to figure out a way to kill the desire to escape. The thing that's been way harder, I think, settling into life as an entrepreneur. I was just talking to my wife about this earlier today. I was like, I've been able to accomplish some ridiculous things. I got us out of Australia during the lockdowns and the mandates when it was told it was impossible. Anna and I have navigated 20 consecutive miscarriages, 10, 12 we've had on the road since we've been traveling for the last 2.5 years. Moving to Mexico and from Australia, like during the lockdowns, like that was way harder than what I thought it would be, even though I knew it was going to be hard. And I often think about that the universe is just tempering me, saying, Laban, I need to prepare you for when you are really successful. And if you do this early, your ego is going to explode and you'll end up like Kurt Cobain. So I'm just submitting to the divine as often as I can. It's challenging when you end up in the emergency room in a foreign country where you don't speak Spanish very well. It's one of the most disempowering feelings you can get, I think. But I'm grateful for all of these experiences, although it doesn't feel like it sometimes.
Yeah, that's hard stuff. What are some important truths that very few people agree with you on?
I do get a good amount of pushback on a world's best declaration statement. And what I mean by that is, if you listen to the start of this, you heard me talk about world's best courage coach. The byproduct of having that declaration in my vernacular has been completely transformative. A number of people struggle with calling themselves the world's best anything. And it reveals to me that there's a lot of, you talked about it before, Sue, imposter syndrome issues. You don't have to agree with me or even believe it. But until you try it and see its true power, I don't think anyone's in any authority to naysay it. And I think a lot of people miss out on the opportunity to try it. And it's so powerful, Sue, because when you go around calling yourself something that is non-quantifiable and intangible, right? That's the two-pronged component part of it. It has to be non-quantifiable and intangible, because if you say I'm the best 100-meter sprinter in the world, you look like an idiot unless you're Usain Bolt. So there's that. And then you've got this self-perpetuating momentum that it creates when you go around calling yourself that. You're like, right, I've made the decision to call myself that. Now I have to be in integrity. How would the world's best courage coach conduct himself? And it's that's where the real power lies in it. You've written this book in a month, and maybe if you hadn't had the motivation, it might have taken you 2 years to write. So it's the same thing with this declaration. It helps compress time and expedite an outcome for me. And that's what I love about it so much.
So yeah, and I was going to ask you about the world's best encouragement, or world's best courage coach, and what goes on behind that. And it's a good segue into another question that I had for you about a project that you're working on called the Honesty Project. So it goes in line with that, living in integrity with the things that you're going to say about yourself or about, what you're going to do. And you want to talk a little bit about your honesty project?
Yeah. So the title was being bandied around, I think, when you and I were speaking about this last, but it will be the Honesty Project, or the Honesty Policy. And the subtitle's still a work in progress. They tend to become a lot more apparent once the book's finished. But it's along the lines of how to live a life of health, wealth, and happiness by being more honest. And the example that I use early on in the book is, and I transcribed Bill Clinton's speech that he gave when he was talking about Monica Lewinsky. And I rewrite it with him telling the truth. And it goes along the lines of, I did have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I lied. And what would have been the response from the world if he admitted it? And how many relationships ended because men used, oh, Slick Willie, as they called him, Bill Clinton, as a role model of what to do. And because, he's the president, he's a role model, he got away with it, and maybe they tried. How many relationships could have been saved if he just put his hand up and said, sorry, Hillary, I made a mistake, forgive me or whatever. Now that a lot of the stuff's coming out with him and this connection to Jeffrey Epstein, even if he never did anything, he's going to have a hard time trying to convince anyone because of the history of, infidelity and admitting it publicly. So I think the world is missing, and I think people are craving the truth now. You see it on the news, like people just want something resembling the truth so that they can make informed decisions. And I think we've had a lot of that taken away from us in the last couple of decades, and it's time to bring it back. And one of the conversations I had with a guest who's an AI genius, he's part of Mensa, this guy Dr. Alan Thompson. I said to him, do you think that AI is going to get so clever at some point that it will be able to detect lies in any capacity? He said, absolutely. So how quickly AI is going, it's a matter of time before it catches up and it can figure this stuff out with, heart rate and breathing, and it can just put a scan over and you can see where you're lying. You may as well operate in integrity as early as you can. And that's why when I wrote the book, so I put as much in there as I could fit, because none of it holds any dominion over me anymore. And if I ever wanted to run for politics, if they wanted to attack me and say, oh, Laban did this and that, he was doing this, like it's in the book. So who cares? And most people don't care. Most people don't care. They're worried about what's going on in their own lives. So, Anna's healing journey started, this is my wife, Anna, started because she felt safe and comfortable around me when I was open and honest when we first got together. And I said, Anna, I've lived a life. You can ask me anything you want as long as you're happy to hear the answer. And boy, howdy, did she take me up on that. And there was some very uncomfortable situations that were sorted out and allowed Anna to open up about her systemic abuse that she experienced growing up, as a child in Russia from her stepfather. So there's a lot of power in vulnerability and honest and being more honest. I'm not saying you need to verbally diarrhea everything that's going on, but just, yes, I ate that ice cream. Like it doesn't need to be so super profound. One other little secret tip that I realized is that the people at the top, the ones that you actually want to spend time with, are the ones that operate at a very similar level for the most part. And they have very long and good bull crap detectors. So you can't pull a fast one over them at all. And you know what? Tell the truth so you don't have to remember anything.
Yeah, that's true. I've heard that before. Yeah, tell
Yeah,
the
it
truth. There's
works.
nothing you have to, yeah, nothing you have
It
to worry
works.
about because
Mm-hmm.
that's what's mapped on the brain anyway, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. What as we're coming back around here, what's one question or topic you wish I would have asked about, and how would you have answered the question or expanded on the topic?
That's a great question and a great way of getting a question. You know what? There's nothing that you haven't asked me that I'm sitting here wishing you had. I like to enter into these opportunities with an open mind just to see where they can go. And you already asked great questions. You're already well researched. Like what else do you want from a podcast host? Um, if you force me to make an answer, I would wish that you'd ask me a question that I'd never been asked before and really had to think through answering. I don't know what that is.
Question that you haven't been asked before. Oh my gosh. See, now the challenge side of me, the other side, the competitive side to me said, is just thinking right now, okay, what kind of question can I come up with that you probably haven't been asked? And I thought maybe what important truth do very few people agree with you on? I thought that was, that might be an interesting one. And we already asked that. I'm trying to think now.
That I have not been asked that question before, so maybe
Oh,
that one counts.
oh, okay.
It's I don't know if you're the same as me, Sue, but I love asking questions to my guests that I want to know the answer to,
Yes, that's
and
exactly what I do.
yeah, because if I find it interesting, more than likely other people will too, and if they don't, then so
Well,
be it.
I have to tell you, going back to your book, your book was fascinating for a number of reasons. One, you talk about in depth of the struggle that you had with your bowels and like what was going on with your body and how you healed your body through nutrition and how you realized that there was that food body connection. I think that's fascinating. The other were the stories. You have some amazing stories in there, and I don't want to give away the spoiler either. And then at the end, the gripping tale of how you ran all those 60 miles, but it wasn't just the running. You were actually going to the mindset behind it, and you were talking about the physical changes that happened in the body and stuff. And to me, I just thought that was just incredible to go through that, but to push yourself to the end. I mean, this just speaks of mental fortitude and determination at its base. So
Well, I appreciate you saying that a lot, sir. And I think running's one of those interesting metaphors. A lot of people either like to do it or love to do it, or they admire people that do like it. And if you look at human evolution, our ancestors used to run the equivalent of 2 marathons in a day in the, out in the outskirts of Africa to hunt down, to tire out an animal to slaughter. And it's a very natural thing. And why is it so cathartic? Why is it so, once you get fit and you don't get sore, once you get to a level of fitness that like I got, running became enjoyable. And I could do 10 miles like that without any thought. And it really helped in that healing and recovery process. That and the food, I think, I definitely attribute to the healing journey. So, for anyone that is looking to access a book that touches on a lot of addiction, whether you are on the receiving end of it yourself or you've got friends and family that are battling with it, I really wrote it in a manner that was not like a finger waggle, like this is what you should do. It's like, hey, this is what I did. And people have lived way more outrageous lives than me, I'm sure, but will never put it down on paper. So I just put down what I'd gone through in the hope that people would normalize not beating themselves up for doing really stupid stuff. Like, if this Laban guy can, make love to a 73-year-old erotic novelist in a bathroom in Las Vegas in the Bellagio, maybe that X thing that I did is not quite so bad. So
that was an incredible story, by the way. I love that story. That
so
was great. I'm just going to make people go buy your book because there's just no reason to retell the story. Hey, you know what? It took a lot of courage to write a lot of those stories in that book. Not only did you bet on yourself, but you're betting on you in that you're putting yourself out there, and there's just a level of vulnerability there for people who write books like that, who do tell their story, but they also wanted to share with the world what they learned and maybe help somebody else. I mean, that's the beauty of a book, isn't it? Like if you just touch one person, it was all worth it. At least that's how I look at it for my book. I look at it like I'm just writing it. If there's one person who got that story and they got touched by that, then done, game over. Game over.
I read that part of what you wrote in the first part of your book. Like it was like a mantra to yourself. If one person benefits from this, it's worth it. And I love that you wrote that because when you're writing a book, like a memoir self-help book, I suppose it will be, like it's going to help so many more than one person. So, but if you write it like only one person's going to read it, then you're not afraid of putting it out there. If you knew that it was going to be straight to a #1 bestseller on, New York Times bestseller list, maybe you'd think twice. But I want my book to become a bestseller organically through it being so good that people can't ignore it, which is that Cal Newport book, Be So Good They Can't Ignore You. of the merit of what was written and the impactfulness it has on people. And that's my encouragement to other people that are thinking about writing a book. Like, if you're really compelled to do it and just see what happens. Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's been a fun process. So with the book, you've got all of this success. What's your definition of success?
So this is a very, very fascinating part of this visible entrepreneurship journey, because my life, Sue, is far from perfection, far from it. And I encounter daily challenges that I need to work through. These miscarriages, financial pressures, visa challenges, all kinds of stuff. And it's very, very important, I think, if you are making steps to be someone in that transformational space, that you get good at being real and raw and vulnerable when you need to be, and not paint a picture that's not real. And the example I'll give you is that I was able to have dinner at the end of 2022 with a lady by the name of Marceline Dyer, and her now deceased husband is Wayne Dyer, for those that have heard of basically the godfather of manifestation. And she divorced Wayne in the middle of his success while he was being on Oprah and traveling around the world, because he was a prolific womanizer, a habitual cocaine abuser, and used to visit brothels very frequently, right? Now, this might be a shock for Wayne Dyer fans. I'm not here to judge Wayne, but I would have rather had Wayne in his book say, by the way, folks, and I realize this wasn't the culture at the time, so I'm not hating on someone who's dead and can't defend himself, but I don't care that you go to the brothel. I don't care that you do cocaine. I want to have all the information there so I can go, okay, I get it, and then I can make an informed decision. And as I've gotten to meet and get to know some of these people that I've idolized, some of them, Sue, are not living lives of integrity. So be very, very careful about where you get your advice and where you take inspiration from. And take it with a pinch of salt until you can get to know the person or really hear from a number of people that they have high integrity. Because it's just you're trying to live this unattainable life, trying to be perfect, and all the while the person was doing all this other stuff. So that's my thoughts on that.
Perfection is an illusion anyway. So why even try? Yeah, I forget. There's a Tony Robbins quote about perfection out there, and
I know sarcasm's the lowest form of wit. I don't know what perfectionism, but
yeah. Well, the point is, perfection is an illusion anyway, because there's no such thing as perfect.
But I am sorry. I am sorry for the Wayne Dyer fan. I like Wayne Dyer too, but isn't it funny?
It is. So Laban, I have so enjoyed our conversation. As we close, what is one small step that someone can do today that's going to help them change their tomorrow?
So I'm going to steal a line from my man Les Brown, because it's so good. And if you've heard this before, I'm going to tell you again because it helps. He says, ask for help, not so that you appear weak, but so that you can remain strong, and keep asking for help until you get it. If you ask your spouse for help, knowing that they're going to try and fix you, unrequited, find someone that you can confide in that's not going to judge you and will just listen to you. And that will save you a lot of heartache, because if you go to someone who's dealing with their own stuff, they are well-intended, but they will just end up driving you crazy because they're trying to fix you, and you're looking at them going, but hang on a second, isn't your life hanging by a thread? So people love trying to fix situations, but find someone that will just listen and be non-judgmental, and you'll have a hell of a bit of time.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. How can people find you?
Well, thank you, Sue. And if this is your first episode or your 101st, and you haven't given this show a review yet, go and do it, because it helps people organically find the bloody episodes. So go and do that. Sue's doing the work. She's on the journey, y'all. She's putting in the reps. So there's a lot of effort that's gone into putting 100 or so episodes, and you should be very proud. If people want to learn more about me, you can put Laban Ditchburn into your favorite search engine and just wait for whatever bonanza comes up, because it's the only one on the planet. But if you want something a bit more specific, just go to the website and all the links to all the social media and everything you might desire. And if you're going to get the book and you like my accent, get the Audible, because it's in my voice. And I've been told that's the best way to consume it if you're a fan of Steve Irwin and Crocodile Dundee.
That's great. Well, Laban, thank you for the gift of your time. This has been awesome.
Absolutely my pleasure. Con gusto, as they say in Spanish. With pleasure.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me, and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, check out my website, personalcoachfinder.com, and find someone who can help. Remember, life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by choice. Take small steps today and make your life awesome, friends.